podcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen only mode.
Hi, good afternoon. Welcome to Coleman Report Live, June 26th. We have John Reosti and Lance Sexton. I'm Joe Coleman. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, John. It's been a couple weeks since I've talked with you, but we have a bunch of stuff to get into. Let's start off with the main story you published a couple weeks ago before the holiday. This is about Huntington Bank being the number one SBA lender, and give us some insights into your reporting.
Well, Huntington, it's no story that Huntington Bank is the number one SBA lender because if you measure it by number of loans, they've been the number one lender for several years. And it looks like they'll definitely be the number one lender again this year. The fiscal year isn't over, but they want to say they lead by a wide volume or a wide margin. The interesting thing I thought and why I did the story was they now consider themselves a nationwide lender. They lend, and when I talked to Brant Standridge, he ticked off a number of states: Arizona, California, New York, the Mid-Atlantic region, Atlanta. So I guess if you could say the Mid-Atlantic region down to Atlanta. So a big swath of the East Coast, Florida as well. And what he said was this. The sense I got from it was it wasn't necessarily a decision made, at the executive level, a massive decision made to pivot and engage in this initiative. It was sort of more of an organic process that as they got more and more customers within their footprint, many of those customers had business outside of the footprint. And they saw no reason not to handle that business, even though maybe it was in Phoenix instead of Columbus or Denver, or Minneapolis. And I'm sure this is not unusual for any number of banks that continue to work with their customers regardless of geographic boundaries. But it just, since it was on that big a scale and the number. In terms of this year's dollars for Huntington, talking dollars now, not number of loans, 40% of the dollars are being originated outside of the footprint. So they're big and apparently getting bigger.
Yeah, Lance, we've talked about the shakeup over the top five lenders throughout the years. Bank of America was a long time number one, and they're no longer on the top 10 list. And Wells Fargo was for a long time number one, and they're moving down. What do you think about this activity for Huntington?
Well, I think that they're certainly, and we talked about this before the show, the big banks, the Wells Fargos, the Citibanks, the Bank of America. I've been in SBA lending and followed the top lender list for a long time, and you used to always see Bank of America and Wells Fargo, and at the bottom of the slide you can see the record number of loans in a year was done by Wells Fargo a few years back. There's some reasons that they're not as active, but as John and we were all talking about before the show, there are all these initiatives for more small loans, and one of the things that could be done is encouraging the big guys to get back out there and start doing more express lending, which is what they did a lot of. Bank of America, Wells Fargo. John, in Arkansas, which is where I've lived frequently, when I was at Legacy National Bank and we were trying to build a very active SBA lending department, we were edging up the list. It always amazed me that, we'd go along and we'd expect to see Harvest Bank and Centennial Bank and some of the banks that are headquartered here, but Wells Fargo would show up on the top Arkansas SBA lender list. So, it's kind of interesting how a lot of the top lenders in SBA lending over the last 5 years, we've seen a shakeup on who's at the top of the list. But, I think to make more small loans, we're going to have to encourage what I call the bigs to get back in the game.
Yeah, that's a great point, Lance. It's a tremendous point. And the interesting thing is, and I imagine Wells Fargo, well, Wells Fargo has some unique challenges, but I imagine Bank of America and the other really big lenders, mirror Huntington in this. Huntington has 200 people that, according to Standridge, about 200 people that are pretty much focused on SBA lending. So this kind of initiative for them didn't take any sort of massive alteration of resources or reallocation of resources. They already had the resources. They already have the processes, everything else. So it wasn't difficult for them, to make a decision, to take a decision to lend nationally. Obviously, Bank of America, once again, they're national. It wouldn't. I'm now speaking for the bank, but it doesn't seem like they would have to, change a lot of things or add a lot of things in order to do more SBA lending, and the same can be said for any number of big banks that aren't as active as they could be. So you're right. Maybe had the agency gone courting, so to speak, and gotten encouraged some more lending by some of these really big players, they could have achieved more loans. That's not saying that they wouldn't want to or have to do what they're doing. It's just that more is always better when it comes to small lending, I guess.
Yes. One of the things about the bigs that they had programs set up, and any SBA lending institution can do this now, but they had SBA lending platforms before they were readily available to all of us to process these smaller SBA loans. And,
Right.
You think about a bank like Bank of America, if they just did 8 or 10 SBA loans in each location, they would do an huge number of SBA loans. So it's
record.
And everybody on this show knows I love small banks. So here I am saying encouraging the bigs to do more, but if we want more small SBA lending, that's one of the easiest ways to do it, in my view.
Excellent stuff, John. Your featured article today is about a former FDIC examiner who opened up a bank. Tell us about Mark.
It's still an organization, but they're getting closer, inching closer. I like these stories. I hope I would imagine most bankers like de novo stories. I think it's good for the industry, and this one was unusual because the organizer, I'll call him the lead organizer. He didn't call himself this, but it seems like he's the lead organizer, is a former examiner who, I guess, confiding in his wife over a long period of time that he felt he could start a bank, and felt it would be, a wonderful way to shake up his career. And finally, she, as he said it, she came home with a computer one day, and a brand new computer, and put it down on the table and said, "Get started." And
she got sick of him.
a few months later, he resigned from his job after a decade at FDIC, and is now they have the provisional OKs, or the provisional approvals from both FDIC for deposit insurance, and in his case, Alabama, and they hope before the end of this year to open the doors on their bank. It will be Nova Bank in Huntsville.
Well, that's very exciting.
We did a webinar with Biz2X. Darren, shout out to Darren Hecht. He and Ruchi, their team, gave us full access to their slides, and Delaney wrote this up. This is the poll questions what's the biggest regulation changes that are struggling SBA teams out there, and the removal of the authorization was number one, Lance. So I don't think that's
you know how I feel about that, because for a lot of my career, I've taught people, one of the best ways to protect your guarantee is to take that SBA loan authorization and make sure you meet every requirement in the SBA loan authorization. That's how you protected your SBA guarantee. So, and I know we're stepping into a new era of SBA lending, but taking away the loan authorization is difficult for people who have been around SBA lending for a long time. There are thousands of closers across the country that are probably very concerned about. I don't have a document that tells me what requirements I have to close the loan. Now they know the requirements, but it's always great to have that authorization and say, got to have first UCC on FF&E, check. I've got to have life insurance on the principals, check. So I mean, I'm not surprised by that response. It's on the biggest pain point. I would have thought that, I'm not surprised keeping up with the latest changes because, SBA went for years with zero change. And, we all sat around for a year and a half, 2 years waiting for a new SOP and it finally pops out. Well, then they pop out 3 SOPs in a matter of a month and a half.
All effective August 1st.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I'm not surprised that keeping up is one of the challenges. I'm not surprised servicing, number 2, I equate to servicing, keeping up with borrowers and processing loans. I'm surprised finding, hiring, and training staff is not higher on that list.
I agree. Yeah. Well, anyways, again, thanks to Biz2X. If you want to check out, we have the recording. We went for about an hour, and it's not a sales pitch. It's what they're finding and how SBA teams are using technology to help them out using AI stuff. And so they have some really cool stuff. So check out the recording, and if you have if you want to email me, I can send that to you. Let's talk about the new SOP. Speaking of, Lance, this dropped last week. It's effective August 1st. We're going to do a webinar on July 13th on this. Another SOP, 5056. This is the delegated authority SOP. And
this actually used to be, I'm sorry, Joe. This actually used to be part of the SOP 5010. And SBA kind of carved the section out that talks about lender requirements, what it takes to be an SBLC, CDC requirements, selling loans on the secondary market, and carved that part out of the SOP 5010, and now it's a new 5056. So it's some information, and there'll be updates to this. So, and one of the things we're going to see, John, Joe, there's going to be some new SBLCs right around the corner. So the requirements for that is in here. What you're required to do if you're going to participate in selling loans on the secondary market is there as well. CDC information, so and oversight information, how SBA reviews and looks at SBA lending institutions. So look forward to doing a webinar on this new SOP.
We are going to talk about the 5010 on Wednesday. This is sponsored by Scott Gapehart. He is talking about the partial interest financing, and that is a free webinar. Sign up for that. Scott's an old-time friend, and we're doing that this Wednesday. So again, shoot me an email if you have any issues signing up for those. Lance, we dropped our ethics training, and that was fun to film and put together. And if you have any new hires, they should be aware of all the fraud that's taken place over the last 10 years. We covered extensively all this fraud, and Delaney again did a great job. So sign up for that as well. And we are on YouTube Live if you want to check out our Coleman Report YouTube channel. And this is our LinkedIn. Anna is doing a lot of work with that. She's very excited about all your posts on Monday and Fridays. Lance, she was talking about how she likes tuning into that. So, John, thank you very much. Great stuff on Huntington and your reporting on the FDIC guy. And Lance, we look forward to seeing you next Friday. And we are going to be on July 3rd, by the way. So we're going to be interviewing John, and we look forward to that. So this concludes today's Home Report Live. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you on Friday.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
Take care.